Welcome to the Leader's Edge, where we celebrate leadership and shine a light on the visionary leaders shaping the future. Hi, I'm HR Huntsman. I'm the founder of Leader's Edge and the creator of the Leader's Edge Performance Engine and Leader's Edge University. I'm thrilled to bring you stories from leaders around the world who are making a difference. In each episode, we're going to champion the innovative strategies, courageous decisions, and inspiring journeys of those who lead with purpose and passion. So whether you're looking to refine your own leadership skills or you simply want to be inspired, you have come to the right place, my friend. In today's episode, you're going to meet Nick Jain. Nick is the CEO of IdeaScale, which is the world's largest innovation SaaS company. His story is one of resilience and achievement. I'm inspired by it. He's an immigrant raised by a single, hardworking grandmother in India who later graduated at the top of his MBA class in Harvard after getting an undergraduate degree in Dartmouth, where he triple majored in math, physics, and economics. Nick is a smart dude. But in this show, you're going to learn from him that human capital matters and innovation isn't a thing. I very much, truly enjoyed my conversation with Nick. I know it's going to add value to you as well. So please join me in my conversation with Nick Jain. Nick, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking time to be on our show.
H, thanks so much for having me. Honored to be here today.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, buddy, I just want to dive in. I saw this quote of yours that I just want to jump into. Human capital matters. Now, you're a tech dude, and you have these advanced degrees in physics and math and economics, but human capital matters. Tell me about that.
Sure. Look, at the end of the day, any organization, whether you're talking government organization or a private sector organization, startup or multi-billion-dollar corporation, is comprised of people. People are doing things, whether that be building cars or building AI, people are there. And how effective people are is really a function of two things. Number one, their innate human capital, right? How smart they are, how well educated they are, what training they have. And number two, how they are organized, because you can have the greatest person, but you put him or her in a no electricity in a dark room, no food or water, they're not going to be super effective, right? So human capital matters because for any organization, because you have to get like great people, again, innately intelligent, motivated, educated, whatever that is. And number two, you have to organize them in a way that actually helps you achieve your organization's goal. And I think a lot of organizations miss that they need to do both things. It's not enough to have smart people, and it's not enough to have the greatest organization. You need both.
How did you come to this? I'm curious. I'm always curious about the journey of the leaders that I get to meet. How did you come to this? Tell me a little bit of your story to become this great leader.
Sure. I don't know if I'm a great leader today. I'm still quite young and trying to learn, but I have a very simple philosophy in life that I don't reinvent the wheel and I can cheat whenever possible. So a lot of what I've just expounded today, I'm a
I love it.
scientist by training, right? Science builds
Sure.
on whatever I did and researched and figured out. And you don't rediscover gravity because Newton did that for us 500 years ago. So a lot of the way I approach right leadership approaches are, much of what I said about human capital is not stuff that I've invented or discovered. There's a ton of good research on this. I'm too lazy to rediscover it and rebuild it. A lot of what I said is actually just based on really good research. So there's a huge body of labor research since the 1970s that basically says, look, some people are more capable than others, either through innate what gifts they were born with or what training they've received over their lives or circumstances. And number two, you can take great people and put them in and bad circumstances, and they're not very effective. And conversely, you can take very mediocre people and put them in extraordinary and really good circumstances, and they become way more productive. The U.S. Army, in fact, or sorry, the U.S. Armed Forces, I should say, all branches of them have amazing research on how you can get the most out of people. And so, like, most of what I said is just like, people figure this out. I'm perfectly glad to copy great people's research and try and implement it.
I love it. I wrote down cheat and lazy. That's don't
What
reinvent
is it?
the wheel.
This is the mother of innovation, right? Somebody invents a machine because they don't want, or somebody invented the wheel because they
Uh,
didn't want to walk and they wanted a
yeah,
horse to walk
that's
for them,
right.
I'm sure.
I like it. I'd love to know what key lessons. Let's break this down and be really specific. If I were to poll your people, the people that you lead, and say, tell me about Nick's leadership style. How does he model this? How does he practice this? What would they say it looks like in operation, how you lead people?
Sure. For better or worse, there's some very transparent reviews of me, both good and bad, on Glassdoor. Anybody can double check if what I'm about to say is honest or not. We encourage our employees to be honest. But here's what I think people would say about me. Number one, I'm incredibly analytical, numbers, math, data driven, both in how I communicate and what I expect from people. Number two, I'm very transparent. There's no politics and games that I play. Number three, I'm pretty blunt. I try and be very direct with people rather than, again, not sugarcoat things, both good and bad. When somebody says something awesome, they don't have to guess whether think they did something awesome. They'll hear from it right away. And conversely, when something's wrong, it's, this is wrong, let's go fix it. And with no personal animosity, people can screw something up and it's just, let's fix this, it's wrong, but without blaming the person, because people make mistakes. And then I'd say, fourthly, people would say, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do the work, right? So I'm not a person who sits on some ivory tower or fancy office and hands out directions. For our CRM, I'm in there like cleaning up the data the way any junior employee would be doing. I am checking designs and testing for bugs. All the junior grunt work that CEOs normally do, I do because it's a core part of me staying in touch with my business, number
Okay.
one. And number two, I actually really enjoy it.
Very good. So let's talk about, I'm going to use your words, blunt, direct, transparent, analytical, data driven. That's going to work for some people and probably not work for others. Tell me the kind of people you're looking for that flourish under that kind of leadership and who struggles under that kind of leadership.
Sure. I want to temper what I said. Like, that is how my brain works. I certainly alter my style in as much as it's possible. I can't do a 180, obviously, but I certainly temper my style for it to be a little bit gentler and a little bit less numbery for somebody whose brain isn't, let's say, a math-driven person.
Okay.
Um, but look, the type of people I work best with are people who are honest and evidence-based rather than gut feel based, right? Gut feel has a place to initiate discussions, but you should not make at least I believe, I don't want to make a normative statement, that you should not make big decisions in life based on your gut or your heart, but rather like thoughtfulness. And I've done that in my personal life. When I sat down and decided to get married, it was a very thoughtful decision. I'm like, okay, I'm out of student debt. I feel like a responsible adult. I've known this woman for 7 years, been living with her for six. So let's tie the knot. But so I would work well with people who are honest. I have zero tolerance for liars. I never lie. I don't, good or bad, I don't lie about things. I want people who are around me who are transparent, who are facts based. And number three, who are willing to self-correct or to correct me, right? If I do something wrong, I want someone to be able to tell me, hey, Nick, you're wrong. This is what you screwed up. Go fix it. In the same way that I would feel that I'm mature enough to tell them that. And then finally, I love working with people who are working towards a broader vision. They're not working for Nick's personal like charisma or cult. At least for me, that's a bad way to lead. I want to lead towards some greater mission. And that greater mission could be something for humanity, or let's make this company awesome. Whatever that greater mission is, I work well with people who work for mission rather than for the individual.
Very good. I'm very curious to find out if your leadership style has changed at all since COVID and the radical shift in our labor economy and people's expectations of work and the radical shift we're seeing, the differences between my generation, Gen X, we have Gen Y and Gen Z. Obviously, you're the younger generation. How has, if it has, your leadership changed with the emerging pressures and needs of the labor market?
Sure. I would say two things, and neither driven by COVID per se.
Okay.
But I was working what I would call my first real job when COVID was happening. I'd spent a decade on in Wall Street doing big billion-dollar private equity deals, and then somewhere just before or during COVID, I took a job co-running a $100 million revenue trucking company, which is very different than Wall Street, right? You got truckers, you got warehouses, a lot of blue collar work and workforce. And I think there's two things that have happened over the last 4 or 5 years. Number one, I got my first real job, as I would call it. And that forced me to develop skills that had been underdeveloped when I'm working in a highly educated Wall Street workforce. It taught me a lot more about managing people because that was less of a thing when you're working in small teams where everyone's just willing to grind 100 hours. So I learned more kind of both interpersonal skills as well as managerial skills being placed in that rather difficult position where I'm learning as I go along. The second is that generational shift, as you were talking about. I work in tech where there's a much younger workforce on average now than some other industries. And there are certain different expectations for what my parents' generation, for example, experienced versus what I'm in between my parents' generation and the 20-year-olds generation. But my father was a janitor, and when his boss told him to do something, it would be like, okay, I'll get it done. Today, you have to be a lot more gentle about suggesting things to, especially the newer cohort of employees, right? You have to be more gentle in communicating things, and there's more expectations of yeah, it's just a lot more gentle style of communication and a great or more broad array of expectations that you have to manage around, and a lot more things you have to be sensitive and careful too, which I'm glad to, but it's obviously that's when you're working versus other groups of people that I've worked with in life.
I'm curious then, just you personally, how do you have to temper that desire to be blunt and open and honest? And how do you filter all that, knowing you need to be softer, you need to be gentler, you need to explain yourself a little bit more? How does that work inside your brain? I'm curious.
It drives me insane, to be honest. It's really, and I'll give a fun example of this, right? So
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time doing marketing activities here, and once upon a time, if you really wanted to go learn how to do great marketing, you joined one of the big consumer goods companies like a Coke or a General Mills, because what they would start you out of college is in these 2-year rotational programs where they are like, okay, you got a college degree, but nothing about the world. You're stupid. We're going to teach you how marketing works. Okay, we're going to teach you marketing math and analytics and how to run a campaign and to do design and stuff like that. But the expectation was when you showed up at General Mills or Coke in the 1990s, they were going to call you stupid in a nice way, and you knew that you knew nothing. Whereas, and look, there's a lot of people who are showing up and having worked at fancy place in marketing, but no one ever told them this is the right way to do something, right? They just were allowed to do whatever they wanted. And so I've certainly personally struggled a lot with that when there's a right way to do something, and yet somebody's already 5 years into their career and their boss has never told them, no, you're wrong. This is the right way to do it, because either their boss themselves didn't know or their boss didn't have the courage to say, this is wrong. So that's something I struggle with a lot. Hey, there's a right answer here. Why can't we just cut the BS and just do what the right answer is rather than me have to dance around it for a couple weeks and let you discover the answer yourself,
Right.
right? When I was as you mentioned earlier on this call, I was a math major. My professors didn't help me discover math. They were like, somebody figured this out 300 years ago. Go learn it. Here's the answer. Go make sure you understand it.
One of the things I teach all the leaders that we work with is it's not that simple. It's not as simple as math or garbage in, garbage out, data in, data out. When you're dealing with the human component, that I fully believe every leader needs to be an amateur psychologist, sociologist, anthropologist.
Yes.
So I'm curious how do you do it, and how would you recommend those that are like you, that are data driven and analytical? How do you put on your amateur psychologist, sociologist, anthropologist hat and realize I'm dealing with a human who has fears and desires and dreams and insecurities and guilt and shame and all that stuff? You just want to get to the deal. It's not, you're learning, it's not that simple.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and I'd give 3 pieces of advice.
There
Number
you go.
one is realize that these analytical leaders are still human themselves. I have fears, hopes, dreams, insecurities. I have nightmares, right? So
That's good.
remember, while they may be more tempered in the way I run my life, they still exist, right? I have
Okay.
all the same insecurities and fears that somebody else would, right? I
That's
have an
good.
irrational fear of heights. It's irrational. I get it, right? And yet it's there. Number two is to practically, so number one is recognize that you, no matter how analytical you are, you do have those same kind of emotional aspects of your life. Number two is place yourself in situations where you are around people who are very different than you. So for example, I play Friday night poker a lot, and you can imagine where there's a bunch of just random guys and gals drinking. We're sitting at a poker table. People are from all walks of life. Like one of my good buddies who plays poker spent 20 years in prison for something, right? And that's somebody from a very different walk of life, a lot more emotional. And so that's, I'm learning and developing new skills because I'm in a circumstance that's very different again than from a Wall Street in private equity atmosphere. And number three, spend active time learning. So I actually know that I have certain weaknesses in life, and those could be psychological weaknesses or skills gaps, right? And I actually take courses or read books on how to fix those weaknesses of mine. For example, I recently took a course on how the math of AI works, but simultaneously, I also took a course on, hey, how do you deal with, what is it, Gen Z or whatever the most recent workforce is, generation is. I read a book on that because that is important for me to realize, hey, again, steal others' great ideas, right? Somebody else has figured out
Love
what
it.
the right way to deal with this new cohort of people is. Let's go learn about that because I know I struggle with that.
Good. I love people that are always learning. We talk about curiosity and inquiry a lot in what we teach. I want to shine a light on IdeaScale. Tell me what you're up to, what you're passionate about, why this drives you.
Sure. So IdeaScale is the largest innovation software company in the world. We've been around about 15 years now, have 100 employees across 8 countries or so, hundreds of clients, major companies like Pfizer, Comcast, major government agencies like US Post Office or the TSA. They're the guys in the blue shirts at the airport. What our software does is it's like a social network for ideas. So think of TikTok or Instagram, but instead of putting funny cat videos or dance videos, you put ideas and ideas for, let's say, a new product your company should have or snacks that should be in the kitchen. And then your colleagues, those could be your employees or the general public, vote on which ideas are good and bad. And the algorithm, the votes plus the algorithm help the best ideas rise to the top, where they get in front of the decision makers and they make stuff happen. And the cool power of that is you've basically created an idea meritocracy where it's not just the loudest person or the most senior person's ideas get done, but rather the best ideas. And that's a really powerful concept because there's a ton of research that shows that organizations where ego matters less and the best things get done tend to perform well, extremely well in the short and long run.
When I was doing research for our talk and I was looking up what IdeaScale does, at first I was confused. I thought you were actually writing the software for the companies to activate these ideas, when in fact, what it does is it filters ideas from the team, filters it up in some mechanism, gives it to whomever is looking at all these ideas. Then the decision makers, it's up to them to do something with it, right?
Exactly. It's TikTok for ideas. We have a
Right.
software platform. Everybody puts in their ideas, and these could be employees within an organization or the public, and it helps select the best ideas. And the best ideas go viral. And again, in the same way that like a funny dance video from Thailand did
Yeah.
last week.
Do you have an example of, I know you've worked with NASA and even the White House, and you mentioned TSA. Do you have an example of something that's filtered up organically that one of these companies has said, we're going to do that?
Sure. So I'll give an example from one of our government clients. This is and this is a big government client that one of their responsibilities is to help people with disabilities participate more fully in the U.S. Workforce. You can imagine the U.S. has a large disabled population that isn't able to, because of their disabilities, participate in the workforce. And because they can't participate in the workforce, that affects them socially, financially. It has bad impacts for our society, etc. And what this government agency was trying to do is like, how do we make it easier for small businesses to employ people with disabilities? It's easy for large businesses. They can have all sorts of compliance functions and support. But how do you have the local hardware store or the local McDonald's or whatever hire more folks with disabilities? And so they used our software to actually reach out to all of these small business owners and say, hey guys, what are your ideas for how we can we as a government agency, we as this big giant national government agency can help you, the small business at the corner of 5th and Main, employ folks in your community who have disabilities.
Love it.
Do you need what is it, supplemental pay? Do you need us to help pay for this? Do you need us to build a sidewalk in front of your place? What is stopping you? And so all these small business owners suggested ideas. I actually suggested one of my own as a small business leader, a medium business leader, I guess now. And they selected 2 or 3 ideas that are now going through the like government bureau process of being implemented. That's pretty
Nice.
cool.
That is very cool. I love your quote, and I'd like you to explain this. Innovation isn't a thing. Tell us more about that.
Sure. People often think of innovation as a technology or a tool, like the iPhone is an innovation, or a spaceship is an innovation, or the wheel is an innovation. Innovation is instead, or at least in my view, is the process for making things better. And that could be as simple as the process for making your recipe for chicken soup better, or the process that gets a spaceship to Mars. And again, the problem with thinking of it as a thing or an outcome is that you miss that for innovation to continue, you need to actually have a good innovation process, because anybody can get lucky with a great invention once in a while, or a great product, or great chicken soup, but you're not going to continuously get better and continue to innovate unless there's a real system behind it.
I would love to learn from you here. At Leaders Edge, we teach this concept that we call creative conflict, and it's linked to what you're talking about. A regular cadence of coming together and having fierce discussions over new ideas. And we use your same phrase, idea meritocracy. what processes do you use to make sure you have good creative conflict? What does it actually look like in your organization?
Sure. I have a great answer for that. We use our own software.
Yeah.
If anybody goes to ideas.ideascale.com, they can see this fierce discussion of anyone in the world submitting ideas on how we could make our software better. This could be customers, this could be random students in China, this could be our employees. We're all posting ideas on, hey, here's something IdeaScale can do to make its software better. And people are voting on each other's ideas. And it's really funny. So I'm the CEO of the company. I've submitted ideas that people hate and they get downvoted because Nick, you have a stupid idea, and then there's other ideas that go to the top. And so the way to answer your question, like number one, we have this fierce kind of disagreement happening in public in a respectful way, obviously, but it's public. Anybody in the world can participate. Anybody's encouraged to participate, whether it be external or internal people. And so the second part of that is we've separated the ego. We at least at IdeaScale have done a really good job of separating the ego of the individual from the merit of the idea. So my ego as Nick, the CEO, doesn't get hurt that much because some of my ideas everybody hates and they get downvoted, and the company or my customers decide, Nick, your idea is stupid, we're not going to do it. Even though I could theoretically just overrule it. That's because we've let go of the ego and the best ideas rise to the top. That allows us to push the best ideas into production, into our software more effectively. And that is, by the way, one instance of how we make decisions at IdeaScale, but it's also, we use that same kind of philosophy and approach to more secret or internal things as well that aren't necessarily visible to the public.
So when all those ideas, they percolate up to the top through the software, what's the mechanism? Do you meet with a board? Do you have a committee that meets? How does it work?
Sure. So the way it works is our product team is constantly looking at this to figure out, hey, what ideas have risen to the top, and then they're taking the best of those ideas and dropping it into our product roadmap, which means they'll change the status of this. Hey, this is an idea that's been selected, so everybody who was involved in that idea, or if I submit it, I'll get a nice notification. Nick, your idea got moved to roadmap. Hurrah! So I'll get a nice good feeling in my gut. But then once they move into the product roadmap, a whole bunch of then software design stuff happens because it's no longer an idea. It's actually something we're doing, which means they have to design it, they have to specify it out, the engineers have to build it, they have to release it. That all happens. And then once it's released, it'll move from on roadmap to, hey, this was done.
Nice. I'd like to shift gears and go personal for a second, if you don't mind. I want to go back to how you became you. Tell me about the impact your grandma had on you.
Sure. So my grandma, who's now passed, had this tremendous impact on me. She was a single grandmother living in India, and she actually raised me from the age of 1 to 4 by herself, 1 to 5 actually, when my parents were living in Canada. So you can imagine a single grandmother living. She grew up in colonial India, so she's back when India was even a country, and so she raised me by herself for the first like 5 years of my life, and that is incredible. And not only because the sacrifice she made, she actually raised 4 generations of her family. She raised her parents, her like 6 siblings, my mother, and then me. So 4 generations of across 80 some years. And why that's inspirational to me is three things. Number one, just here's a woman who truly dedicated her life in the service of multiple generations of her family, never lived for herself, but did something that has a tremendous impact on a lot of where I am and where my family is because of the sacrifice she made. Number two is I think she instilled a couple of core values. Number one is a focus on education is what I would call a moral good. A lot of people think of education as a way to just to get a job. She instilled, no, education is like something that just makes you a better you, whatever that is. So that's something I value deeply to this day. And number two, this idea that it's okay to live a life in service. I think it's so easy for folks, especially now that we see Instagram and all these things of people taking on their fancy vacations and fancy cars, that you're pursuing life for its own pleasures, or what's the term, hedonism.
Yeah.
But it's okay, and in fact it's perhaps a more satisfying and fulfilling life to live in service. And then finally, like she was just in taking care of family, like that is an important virtue for me, that I will like be in service of my parents given the sacrifice they made to me, and hopefully when I have kids that I will be in service to them. And that's just tremendous values that when somebody imprints that deeply on your life,
Yeah.
it's hard to lose those values, nor should I, by the way.
That's beautiful. I wrote down education is a moral good. Live a life of service is something that I try and live out. Really good stuff here, Grandma. What's the best lessons your parents taught you?
That's a hard one because my parents' values were more or less aligned with my grandmother's, but I would say, look, my parents they get basically they gave up their kid at the age of 6 months, and I cannot imagine that level of sacrifice where you
Oh,
just have a kid, your firstborn, and you ship him away to another country and you don't get to see him for 5 years. That is a tremendous, it's actually, I think, a little bit more common amongst immigrant families, but still rare amongst immigrant families, certainly. And that level of sacrifice, that you are sacrificing your child in order to give them a better life, is a heartrending sacrifice. And so I don't know if it's a lesson that I've taught, but it's an appreciation of the willingness of making big sacrifices in life when you're thinking for the long term.
that's amazing.
Because that's a truly long term bet, right? That you're giving up the first 5 years, the developmental, formative years of your kid's life in order to have create a better livelihood for both them and for yourself.
And the trust they must have had in your grandma,
Yeah.
the trust that she would do right by you for sure.
Mhm.
Let's close with a couple questions. What advice would you give to a young leader just starting out? Maybe they're just graduating from college or looking at their first, like you said earlier, their first big kid job, focusing on leadership now. What advice would you give them to pave the road for their future leadership journey?
Sure. I would say two things. Number one, start investing very early in your career to be extremely competent at something, whatever that is, at a technical level. If you want to be at the end of the day, leaders need two things. They need technical competence in something. You need to be good at something. And number two, you need to be able to deal with people. It's not enough to be either just one of those. You can be incredibly charismatic, but if you don't know squat about your whatever you do for a living, whatever you sell or whatever you build, that's bad. So number one is, and start investing early in technical competence because that takes a long time to develop. What's that old joke? 10,000 hours or something. I don't know if I
Yeah,
believe that, but it takes
yeah,
many years to be
a lot.
extremely competent in
That's
something if
right.
you want to be CEO somewhere
Right.
someday. Number two is place yourself in situations to develop where you can develop those interpersonal skills. And that necessarily, my example is going to play poker where I meet people from different walks in life. But it's so easy for us to hang out with people who went to the similar colleges as us or work in the same factory as us. Find avenues in life that through clubs, bars, walking down the street, where you meet and regularly interact with people that are different than you, because that will force you to develop skills that may not be that useful today, but will be useful as you move into leadership roles.
I love it.
And you can't develop them when you're there, or it's too late,
It's too
or
late.
it'll be a lot harder at least.
I love it. What are you most excited about as you look at your next 5 years, whether it's IdeaScale, you personally, your family, marriage? What are you most excited? What jazzes you up?
I'm having a kid my first kid in 3 weeks, so that is pretty
Nice.
exciting and terrifying. So that's my wife would kill me if I didn't say that, but yes. So that's what I'm most excited about and most afraid of because yeah, I'm now going to be responsible for a weak little human being's life, and that's a tremendous amount of responsibility.
It's the greatest thing to invest in the next generation. I'm a father, grandfather, and as a leader, the CEO of IdeaScale, but investing in that little human is going to be the greatest joy of your life. I'm happy for you and your wife. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. Two ways to get in touch with IdeaScale. Our website is ideascale.com. Our software is completely free for teams less than 100 people. So whether you're an individual or you're a 99-person team in a multi-billion-dollar corporation, software is completely free. Go check it out. Not a trial, by the way. Truly, just the software is free. Number two, if you want to get in touch with me personally, best ways through LinkedIn. My name is Nick Jain. I respond to 100% of messages. So feel free to DM me.
Wow, that's amazing. As you were talking, I know exactly one of my companies that I'm going to send your way. It's a startup that I'm helping with, Doctor Now, and they're working with people around the world. And I can't wait to send them your direction. This is such a great idea. Nick, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure. I hope you're really proud of yourself, what you're doing, the difference you're making, how you're leading. Thank you for taking time to be on our show.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, H, again. It's been an honor to be invited.